60,000 years ago, northern Iraq, Shanidar cave. He died at night, not from a predator, not from a wound received during the hunt. He simply stopped breathing. His heart stopped. The body that had worked for more than 40 years, a great deal for that time, a very great deal, finally stopped. Those who were nearby woke up because of the silence. It sounds strange, to wake up because of silence. But in a cave where several people sleep close together, breathing can be heard. It is part of the background, part of the soundscape. That means everything is all right. And when one breathing disappears, it is heard. Not as a sound and as its absence. Someone came closer, touched him, called to him. Nothing. And here, in this moment in this cave, 60,000 years ago, something happened that anthropologists, philosophers, neurobiologists, and theologians are still discussing. Something that no other animal on the planet, apparently, experiences in quite the way a human being does. A confrontation with irreversibility. What does it mean to die? For those who remain nearby. Let us begin not with the dead, but with the living. Those who are standing beside the body now. What are they experiencing? What is happening in their brains? The first thing is mismatch. The body is there. It is here. It is the same as yesterday. The same facial features, the same shape of the hands, the same clothing, but it does not respond. It does not breathe. It does not move. It does not react to touch. The brain is confused, literally confused in the neurobiological sense. The system for recognizing other beings, one of the oldest and most powerful systems in the primate brain, says, this is a person. This is someone familiar. This is the one with whom I spent years, with whom I hunted, from whom I took a piece of meat when I was hungry, who helped carry a burden. And the system for assessing threat and the state of the environment says, something is wrong. Something has changed. Something has broken. These two systems do not agree. And that disagreement is painful. Literally physically painful. Not a metaphor. Neuroimaging of grief in modern humans shows activation in the same regions of the brain that activate during physical pain. Grief is pain, not like pain. Pain. And this mechanism is not our invention. It is older than us. It exists in chimpanzees, who remain for hours beside the body of a dead infant. In elephants, who return to the place where a companion died for years. In crows, who gather around a dead crow and remain silent. The death of another is registered. It does something to those who remain nearby. But in the Neanderthal, there is something more. Something that is not present in the elephant and the crow. The understanding that this is forever. That is the hardest part. Animals react to the death of a companion. But there is no evidence that they understand death as a concept, as an inevitable outcome awaiting everyone, as their own future death, as something that admits no exceptions. A human being understands. Exactly when this understanding appeared is one of the most difficult questions in the evolution of consciousness. Homo heidelbergensis? Perhaps already. The Neanderthal? Very likely yes. Because the Neanderthal buried the dead. And that is the key word. Buried. Did not simply leave the body, did not simply walk away, but did something with the body. Placed it in a specific place, sometimes with objects, sometimes with food, sometimes with flowers. Why? Why bury? The rational answer is sanitation. A body decomposes, attracts predators and scavengers, creates disease. Removing the body from the living space is pragmatic. But that does not explain flowers. It does not explain objects beside the body. Tools, food, ornaments. It does not explain the special positioning of the body, often curled as though sleeping. It does not explain why burials were often placed deep inside a cave, in a specific place, rather than simply thrown outside the camp. Something else is happening. Something that points to a concept, to an idea, to an understanding that goes beyond immediate pragmatism. Perhaps the understanding that the dead person continues somehow, that something of him exists somewhere else. Perhaps a desire to help him in that continuation. Perhaps simply an unwillingness to part, an unwillingness to accept that he is no longer there. This is not religion, not yet. Full religion still lies tens of thousands of years away, together with the larger sapiens brain. But it is the first movement in that direction, the first gesture towards something beyond the visible and the tangible. Him. Let us speak of a specific individual, Shanidar 1. That is what he is called in the scientific literature. An adult male. Age at death, about 40, perhaps a little older. By the standards of that time, elderly. By ours, not especially. But physiology wore out faster. His bones tell a story. The right arm was atrophied. The forearm and part of the upper arm, judging from the bones, were either amputated or functionally lost long before death. In childhood or adolescence. That means he lived with one working arm for most of his life. A cranial injury, traces of a healed blow to the head. He survived it. He healed, or his body healed on its own. Arthritis tore in the joints, in the spine. Chronic pain was probably his constant companion in the final years of his life. Vision, perhaps impaired. There are reasons to think he had damage to the eye socket. And despite all this, he lived beyond 40, in Pleistocene conditions, without medicine, without antibiotics, without surgery. That is impossible without help from the group. This is direct evidence. The group fed him. The group protected him. The group carried part of his burden. Not because he was fully useful. With one arm, arthritis, and poor vision, he was much less effective as a hunter. Because he was one of their own. This is altruism. This is care for those who cannot fully support themselves. This is one of the most human things we know. And it is here already. 60,000 years ago. In a cave in the Zagros Mountains. The day of death. What happens in the cave? People gather around the body. Several of them. Probably the whole group. They stand. They look. They do not immediately do anything. They surostran. They simply stand. This is recognizable. It is what happens beside a dead body in every human culture of every time. It is a pause. A moment when the reality of what has happened has not yet been fully accepted, not yet integrated. When the body is there, but he seems absent. Because what made him this person has gone somewhere. Where is he? This question is one of the first metaphysical questions, perhaps the first. Because the question, where did the world come from, can be avoided if no one thinks about it. But the question, where did this person go, arises by itself as soon as there is a brain complex enough to ask it. Where is he? He was just here. Now he is not. The body is here. But he is not. What does that mean? The body. The Neanderthal understood that the body and he were not the same thing. This is an enormous cognitive step. Most animals do not make this distinction. For them, the individual is the body. The body is alive. The individual is there. The body is dead. The individual is gone. End. But if you ask where is he while looking at the body, then you already distinguish. You already understand that he is not only the body. That something was in this body, something that made him himself, and that something is now absent, even though the body remains. This is the beginning of the concept of consciousness. The beginning of the idea that inside the body there is something immaterial, something that can leave, something that can perhaps exist somewhere else. From this idea, everything will grow. Religion, philosophy, the idea of the soul, the idea of an afterlife, the entire vast mass of human spirituality, From shamanism to Christianity to Buddhism, all of it begins here. In this question asked over a body in a cave. In this distinction between the body and the one the person was. This is the first philosophical question. And it was not asked in words. Words were not yet available for it. It was asked in bewilderment, in pain, in the gaze fixed on the face of someone who is no longer there. Flowers. This is the most disputed part. In 1960, Ralph Solecki, who led the excavations in Shanidar cave, announced that pollen from flowers had been discovered around the remains of Shanidar 4, another burial in the same cave, a great deal of pollen. From several species of plants, many of which bloom in spring and summer. Some of these plants had even been used as medicinal plants in that region until recently. The conclusion Solecki made, and the one that became a sensation, was that Neanderthals had placed flowers on the body. It was an image of extraordinary power. A caveman with flowers, wild and rough and gentle. A mammoth killer, and someone who grieves over the dead and brings him spring flowers. Later, doubts appeared. Other researchers pointed out that the pollen may have entered the soil through the activity of rodents. Some species of burrowing rodents in that region actively drag plants and seeds into underground burrows. Rodents dig tunnels near burials. The pollen might have been accidental. This is fair criticism. Science must consider alternative explanations. But here is what matters. Even if there were no flowers in this specific case, Neanderthal burials exist. Intentional, real, bodies placed in pits, bodies in specific positions, sometimes with objects nearby. This cannot be explained by accident or by rodents. Something was there. Flowers or not, something was there. Pain. Let us talk about pain. Not physical pain, the pain experienced by the living. In the 1960s and 1970s, the psychologist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross described the stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. That model was later refined, disputed, modified, but the basic observation remained. Grief has structure. It passes through particular states. It is a process, not a point. This process is not cultural, not learned, not something we do because it is customary. It is biological. It is the work of a brain that must rebuild its model of the world. Because the dead person occupied a place in that model. For many years, this person was part of what the brain perceived as the world. He was in its predictions. Tomorrow he will come. He will do this. He can be counted on for that. He was in expectations, in habits, in the way the space of the cave was organized. This is his place. These are his things. His voice sounds like this. And now, all of those predictions are wrong. The brain must rewrite them. It must remove him from every model, every prediction, every expectation. And that is work. A great, painful, long piece of work. That is precisely why grief takes time. That is precisely why it comes in waves. Because the brain collides with yet another place where the dead person used to be. Another expectation that will now never be fulfilled. And each time it is a small blow, a small update to the model, a small pain. That is exactly why smell is one of the strongest triggers of grief. Because olfactory memory is one of the most direct and least filtered. The smell of the one who died goes straight into the limbic system, bypassing rational processing. And the brain, for a second, thinks he is here, and then understands that he is not. This mechanism is the same one that existed in the Neanderthal, the same limbic system, the same chains of association, the same work of rebuilding the model of the world. Grief is one of the most conservative human experiences. What do they do with the body? A decision is made, not quickly, not like a plan. Something simply begins to happen. Someone takes something and places it beside the body. Someone else does the same. This is not ritual in our sense, not yet. There is still no priest, no prayer, no established order. But something. People bring things. A stone he carried, a piece of something. Perhaps food, perhaps flowers. We do not know for certain. But something is placed beside him. Why? One answer is magical thinking. Thinking according to the principle that if I place this beside him, something will change. Thinking that does not obey the logic of causality in our sense, but works by similarity and contact. This belonged to him. Therefore, it is connected to him. Therefore, he needs it. Magical thinking is not a sign of stupidity. It is very early, very ancient, very human thinking. It exists in all children. At 3 or 4 years old, children actively use magical thinking. It exists in adults in every culture, in the form of superstition, ritual, omen. This is not an error of evolution. It is an adaptive tool for dealing with uncertainty. When there is no way to establish exact cause and effect, magical thinking offers some kind of system. It offers an illusion of control, where control does not exist. Death is maximum uncertainty. Magical thinking is the first answer. Shanidar Cave, the place. The Zagros Mountains, northern Iraq, near the border with Iran. Elevation, about 1,000 meters above sea level. The cave is large, almost 1,000 square meters of living space, with the ceiling reaching up to 15 meters in some places. This was a place used for a long time. A very long time, not by one generation. By many, not by one group alone. Perhaps by different groups. The traces of occupation in Shanidar Cave cover the period from 100,000 to 60,000 years ago. 40,000 years. 40,000 years during which Neanderthals lived in this cave. That means the place was known, passed down across generations, perhaps perceived as our place, as a place of belonging, a place of safety, a place that was familiar and to which one could return. And in this place, they buried. Not outside, not just anywhere. Inside. In the familiar, inhabited their own space. That says something too. It is a desire for the dead person to remain within the space of belonging, to remain where he had lived, in home, if that word can even be applied to a Neanderthal cave. Perhaps it can. What is death for the one who dies? We do not know whether the Neanderthal thought about it, but we know that a brain of sufficient size, and the Neanderthal brain was on average even slightly larger than ours, is capable of a certain kind of self-awareness, capable of understanding that I exist, that I am something. And if this understanding exists, perhaps another does too. The understanding that this I may cease to exist. This is the awareness of one's own mortality. This is one of the heaviest forms of knowledge available to consciousness. The anthropologist and psychologist Ernest Becker devoted an entire book to it. The Denial of Death, Pulitzer Prize, 1974. His thesis was that much of human culture, civilization, and religion consists of ways of coping with the awareness of one's own mortality. Attempts to create something greater than one fragile organism. Something that will outlive its death. Monuments, books, children, religions, states, works of art. All of these are answers to one question. How can one exist knowing that one will die? If Becker was right, and there are many arguments in his favor, then all human civilization grew from this awareness. Not from intelligence as such, not from language as such, but from the impossibility of living without an answer to the question, what will happen when I am no longer here? And this question may have been asked here for the first time, in the cave, by a Neanderthal, over the body of the one who had been nearby, and is no longer there. Change. After death, something changes in the group. Not immediately, not in a single moment, but it changes. The place where he slept and he is not there. The place by the fire and empty. His smell and still present, on things, on the place where he lay. But he absent. The others continue. This too is biology. The survival system does not switch off because of grief. The body continues to want food, continues to require sleep, continues to notice danger. Grief and the continuation of life exist simultaneously, not one replacing the other, together. Everyone knows this. That strange, awkward state in which it hurts terribly, and yet one feels hunger. When someone close has died, and still one must make arrangements with the funeral home. When grief is immense, and life around continues in its ordinary rhythm, and that feels almost insulting. This is not insensitivity. This is not betrayal. This is biology. The body continues to live. It does not know how not to live. The loneliness of death. There is another dimension to this event that is rarely discussed. The death of another is the first encounter with something that cannot be shared. Everything else can be shared. Food is shared. Hunting is shared. Grief is shared by sitting together, touching, making sounds together. It is possible to be together in grief, and that means something, that helps. But death itself cannot be shared. The dying one goes alone. It does not matter how many people are nearby. It does not matter how close they are. In the moment when consciousness, if consciousness is there, goes out, that happens in solitude. Complete. Absolute. This is a special solitude. One understood precisely when one looks at the dead and realizes, I cannot go with him. I can be beside him until then. But not there, a boundary that cannot be crossed. And perhaps this solitude of death is one of the sources of the idea of accompaniment. The idea that the dead should not go alone. That one should give him something for the journey. That one should place something beside him. Something from the world of the living. Into the world he is entering. Food, tools, flowers. Take this with you. You are not alone. Neanderthal and sapiens. Two human species existed at the same time. Homo sapiens already exists in Africa. Already spreading. Already moving northward into Europe. The meeting is inevitable, and it will happen several tens of thousands of years after this death in Shanidar cave. What happened at that meeting remains one of the most debated questions in paleoanthropology. Genomic analysis says there was interbreeding in non-African humans today between 1 and 4% of Neanderthal DNA. A small number, but real. That means the meeting happened, and it included more than competition. What else happened? War, replacement, disease, climatic change, changes in the resource base. All of this is debated. There's no final answer. Perhaps there never will be. Neanderthals disappeared around 40,000 years ago. They lived as a species for about 400,000 years. That is an enormous span of time. For comparison, we, sapiens, have existed for about 300,000 years. As a species, we are still younger than the Neanderthals were at the moment of their disappearance. They buried their dead. They cared for the wounded and the disabled. They used ochre and other pigments, perhaps for decoration. They made highly complex tools. They adapted to the harshest conditions of glacial Europe. They were human, not like us. Different, but human. And their disappearance is a loss. Not in the sentimental sense, in the literal one. The extinction of a species is the disappearance of a unique way of existing in the world, a unique perception, a unique way of working stone, of hunting, of burying the dead. What Shanidar 1 thought and felt, we will never know. That too is a loss. What we took from this death, we bury our dead. Every culture, every era, anthropologists have never found a human culture that simply left bodies anywhere without some kind of ritual. This is universal. This comes from the Neanderthal, or from someone even earlier, but it is older than we are. We bring things to the dead, flowers to the grave, food to the memorial meal, favorite objects into the coffin. This is the same movement that existed in Shanidar cave. The same attempt to give something for the journey. The same inability to accept that he is leaving with nothing. We ask questions about death. Every religion in the world does this, answering the question of what happens after. Every philosophical system touches it. All literature, in the end, is about it, because death is the only absolutely universal human experience, the only thing awaiting everyone without exception. We fear death. And this, too, is the Neanderthal. The same awareness that I am finite, the same fear before irreversibility, the same inability to fully accept that all of this will end. We love, and we lose those we love. And the pain of that loss is the same pain that existed in Shanidar cave. The same work of the brain rebuilding the world without the one who is no longer there. The same grief, which is in essence the measure of love. Grief is proportional to how much space a person occupied in your model of the world. Grief is love with nowhere left to go. This is not a beautiful phrase. It is neurobiology, returning to the body. After some time, perhaps a day, perhaps several, the body is placed into a pit, not deep, a few tens of centimeters, curled as though asleep, perhaps something beside it, perhaps nothing. We do not know for certain in every specific burial. The pit is filled in, or covered with stones, or simply left as it is. And the group continues to live in the cave, beside this place, perhaps passing it every day, perhaps sometimes stopping there, perhaps saying something, or saying nothing. The dead person remains nearby. He did not vanish into some unknown distance. He remained here, in a familiar space, in his own place. This is the first cemetery. The first place that holds not the living, but the memory of those who lived. The first place that says, he was here, right here. And this he was is important. Important enough to leave a trace. Important enough to do something rather than simply walk away. Shanidar Cave was excavated by Ralph Solecki in the 1950s and 1960s. Several Neanderthal skeletons were found, numbered Shanidar 1, 2, 3, and so on. One of them, Shanidar 4, became the basis for the discussion about flowers. Renewed excavations, beginning in 2015 under the direction of Emma Pomeroy from Cambridge, discovered another burial, Shanidar Z. Judging by the body position, it had been deliberately placed. Analysis of the pollen nearby is still ongoing. Shanidar 1 is a real person. His skeleton is in the National Museum of Iraq in Baghdad. His pathologies are well documented. The fact that he survived with one working arm and multiple injuries is direct evidence of group care. Other Neanderthal burials include La Ferraci Cave in France, Kibara Cave in Israel, and several sites in Spain. In all cases, there is evidence of intentional body placement. In some, objects nearby. Genomic analysis of admixture between sapiens and Neanderthals is real and has been reproduced by many laboratories. Roughly 1 to 4% of the DNA in non-African populations of Homo sapiens comes from Neanderthals. Some of these genes still affect our immunity and certain aspects of our physiology. We carry them within us, literally. The cave emptied, not immediately, not on that day, but through thousands of years, through changes in climate and resources and encounters with other people, the cave emptied, but not completely. Bones remained there. Several skeletons covered by earth and time. 60,000 years. And they survived. Not because they were trying to survive, it simply happened that way. And in the 1950s, a person with a shovel found them. And that too means something, that we search for them, that it matters to us to know who they were. That Ralph Solecki spent years finding and describing these people, long dead, unknown to anyone, leaving no other trace except their bones and a shallow pit in the stone of a cave. We remember those we never knew. We give names to bones. We reconstruct their lives, their illnesses, their deaths. We speak about them. That too comes from them. That too is something they began when they first filled in a pit and placed a stone above the body of the one who had been nearby. He was here, right here. We remember. Even those we never knew. Even those from whom only bones remain. Even those who lived 60,000 years ago in a mountain cave, above a river in what is now called Iraq. We remember. This is the most human thing we know how to do.